Welcome my friends, today we are playing Bud or Dud with Marvel Boy, the latest card releasing here in Snap as a Series 5 card. He is one of, if not the most highly anticipated cards of the season. Is he going to be able to live up to the hype, or is he going to end up vanishing into obscurity? And what decks is he going to be most relevant in? All of that and more as we dive right in here. A 3-2 with an ability that I have been waiting to come into Snap. Incredibly excited for this. After each turn, give 3 of your 1-cost cards plus 1 power. I have loved the idea of a battery, an engine, a buff engine that will continually be able to activate. Crucially here, we don't have an on reveal, we don't have an ongoing tag. This is unstoppable. Red Guardian can turn him off, but aside from that, nothing is going to be able to prevent these buffs from landing on the 1-cost cards. Now, the 1-cost cards are the most fragile in the game, so it brings us to a really interesting play pattern where we're trying to preserve those little bodies that are going to get stronger and stronger. And let's talk about stronger here, because this is incredible energy efficiency if you're able to set up everything. If on turn 1 you play 1 cost and on turn 2 you play 2 1-costs, you will be all set for Marvel Boy to hit the board on turn 3. And if you do so, you will be generating a full 14 power over the course of a 6-turn game. These are a breakdown on if you played him in later turns. So you played him on turn 5, again with the maximum number of buff targets available, he's still going to hit 8 plus power for your side. Of course, allocated a little bit randomly depending on what 1-costs you have available, but that's still gladiator level power, admittedly without the interaction with the opponent's deck, which can be both a positive and a negative depending on how you're playing gladiator. I love this, and if we incorporate magic, we're going to be able to get even more. Now, of course, how often are you going to be able to get that 14 power? Not super often, because it is requiring all of the buff targets to be set up in advance and then Marvel Boy to be played exactly on curve, and this takes us into his synergies, his friends list. Where are the cards that we can play him with to be able to get the maximum effect? Squirrel Girl is going to be Besto Friendo. 3 1-costs right out of turn 1. Marvel Boy is going to be able to buff those on up. One of the downsides to playing Squirrel Girl early is you don't know all the locations that she is going to be filling with cards prior to them revealing, primarily because they can be locked down for whatever reason, and Marvel Boy, because you're going to get additional buffs on those squirrels, makes it a little bit less damaging to go ahead and just throw the Squirrel Girl out on curve. Debris, also awesome, and maybe a little bit of a junk package, something where we are developing detritus on the opponent's side of the board, but we know that our rocks are going to be getting buffed up, so they're even better, and we can really quickly get a lot of tokens to be buffed. High Evolutionary runs a ton of 1-cost cards. You've got Sunspot, you've got Nebula, you've got Misty Knight as core pieces to that engine. You are also often incorporating a lot of protection pieces to keep them alive because they are flimsy, and Marvel Boy could play right in there, though Marvel Boy will then compete with Cyclops. But again, if you have the buff target set up, Marvel Boy is generating more power for you than the Cyclops debuffs. So it's really interesting to think about how well that could slot in. And then we have, or even think about it in another way, is you could run some of those engine cards. You take Misty Knight out, you run something else, and then you can play a very similar 2 high evo game plan just without those cards, and Marvel Boy is a buff engine instead. Guys, the possibilities here are really, really exciting. And Thanos, of course, a deck that runs a lot of 1-costs and has ways to be able to summon them from the deck with the Yellowstone there. So there could be something really fun in there as a Thanos zoo for us. I'm going to be testing that out. You know it. So subscribe to the channel. We're going to be right here as the card releases. A little bit after, actually. We're going to be postponing our normal stream and streaming in the afternoon to evening. A couple hours delayed, but we're going to be rushing to Infinite with Marvel Boy and with Hawkeye Kate Bishop, who is another Besto Friendo, able to generate those 1-cost cards and the trick arrows back into hand. It's a great piece to be able to guarantee those bodies, those little buff targets from Marvel Boy hitting the board. Kazar, of course, accentuating the Zoo playstyle as well. Blue Marvel is going to be represented in there as well. Just kind of Kazar is representing that Zoo archetype, is playing incredibly well with Marvel Boy. And then Magic for the game extension. Anytime you have these engine cards, like Nebula, Sunspot, Marvel Boy, that all seem to play really well together, getting the extra turn means you keep on getting to compound that efficiency of those cards, hopefully while the opponent is starting to run out of gas. Finally, we're looking at the requirement that I am seeing of bringing protection with us. We have this really high efficiency piece in the Marvel Boy to spread out the buffs, and honestly, those one-cost cards are usually very effective at translating energy spent into power on the board, so we have to invest in some lower tempo plays to give us the control to protect them. The armor and the Kyera will prevent our cards from getting popped, and the Cosmo is here to shut down any of the on-reveal attack control shenanigans as well, because Shadow King is out there and he will be hunting. The developers, they keep on making the environment even better to run Shadow King with every single season, and the community refuses wholesale to adopt Shadow King. It's hilarious. At some point, it has to tip, right? If you're one of the guys just kind of sleepers running the Shadow King, let me know in the comments below. I'd be fascinated how much success you are seeing. Now, this is really interesting because we're into the trap cards. These are the cards that appear to be good with Marvel Boy, but I think are actually not going to pan out. Luke Cage, immediately trap card, because you're going to have to remember he was recently changed to not block Shadow King. Do not try and think that he's going to be able to preserve your buffs. He is not. Shadow King as setting a card's power is going to be different than decreasing a card's power. It's a little convoluted, but I think once we get used to it, it will ultimately make sense. Then we have Human Torch and Deadpool, actually specifically called out in the developer reveal of Marvel Boy as being good synergies. I think they're not. Sorry. I think that the play pattern of the decks that are using these guys, Destroy and Phoenix Force, is not super conducive to having Marvel Boy as this setup piece and then trying to buff these cards. Yes, they double, so yes, they make extra use of the buffs, but I think the rest of the deck doesn't really come together in a way that accentuates Marvel Boy, and I think he's actually competing with other plays you want to be making in those early turns, which would then slow the deck down too much to be effective in their current forms. I think their current forms are really well refined and really good. So again, you can let other people burn their cubes trying to test this, and I'll save you a few by saying that they're not quite gonna pan out. Looking on the opposite spectrum here, the enemies, the hunters. Of course, one costs are incredibly fragile. You've got Killmonger and Elektra who are going to be hunting. Maybe it's time to run Elektra as a little bit of tech. I'll be curious to see where the meta settles, if she's going to have enough targets to justify her existence, but she might. She really might. Shadow King, of course, is the best, being able to wipe the buffs away. I think that decks playing Marvel Boy are going to try and spread out their one costs so they're not super vulnerable to a Shadow King just attacking one lane that Marvel Boy's maybe been buffing multiple times. The Shang-Chi could even take down some of these cards if they catch too many buffs. Again, we're thinking maybe +4 on some of these one costs, and in a Zoo deck where you're stacking on a Kazar and a Blue Marvel, suddenly that one cost card could actually be Shangable, which is crazy, but again, if he's striking a lane with a lot of power, that is going to be devastating to our game plan. Alright, time to roll forward the verdict. Where do we stand on Marvel Boy? We've assessed the pros, the cons, the kind of decks that he's going to be played in, and we're going Bud. Oh my gosh, I love this card. I am slamming down the prediction here that he is going to be the must-buy of the season. 4 keys, baby. I love this idea. Initially, I was hesitant. It seemed like the one costs are just so fragile, but as I continued to refresh with the armor, the Cosmo, the Kyera, we have awesome ways to be able to protect all of our little buffed up one costs, and especially thinking back to how well Gilgamesh Zoo was doing when it was popular for that blip in the meta. I think as we tune that and add in this amazing efficiency in Marvel Boy, we're going to be onto something really special. And then spreading it on to saying Thanos and High Evolutionary, I saw more flexibility from this card, so I think it's going to be a awesome deck building piece to be able to incorporate into your lineup. And speaking of incorporating into your lineups, we'll get to the deck that I am really favoring for Marvel Boy in a second. His cash is insane. I mean, guys, you're going all in on this if you don't have these cards. Red Hulk is a must-have for your collection. Blob, less so after the buff. We're waiting to see where he is going to settle, but he's been so relevant for so long. I have to imagine that he's going to be pretty dang solid. I mean, heck, we're looking at a future with data mined cards where we're going to be able to set the power of cards in deck up to 4. We could be seeing a version where Blob at a higher starting power is able to get really punchy. So that's, I hope, enough to be able to really encourage you guys to blow the resources on this cache and set yourselves up for success. Now, let's flip over to that deck. Oh, wow, Teddy is so creative. Marvelous Zoo. I know the Marvel Boy decks write themselves, but this is basically Gilgamesh Zoo with the Marvel Boy Magic Onslaught tweak. This is letting us really develop a big high-end game plan where we're going to be slamming down our ongoings. We're going to try and consolidate Ant-Man or Dazzler on top of Kazar, or underneath, whatever. You're going to play these in later turns, but Kazar, Blue Marvel, and then be ready with the Onslaught to come in later with that magic extending the game. Being able to get more buffs from Marvel Boy, and then just more efficiency across everything. The squirrels from the Squirrel Girl and the tokens from Shannon will be able to discount the Mockingbird. If that's not enough, we can always flex that around to maybe say a control card. Control cards are highly effective if you are using magic to extend the game, because you have more likely a chance to find really high value targets from your opponent rather than them able to hold them until the end of the game. So I think that this is just going to be awesome right out of the gate, because it has this baseline of raw efficiency in Zoo, which is just on the bubble of being meta, and then the Marvel Boy effectiveness really pumping it up. Plenty of space to be able to bring in the tech cards, and I can't wait to see how this plays out. Once again, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be here on YouTube and Twitch testing this alongside Kate Bishop, and to be able to make sure you get notified for that Kate Bishop, again, on the channel, it's going to be right here. Everything you need to know on how good this Battle Pass card is going to be. Till next time, thank you guys for watching. Keep on snapping. All right.